And let's talk business matters. Two of America's largest cable companies announced they are merging. Privately held Cox Communications is combining with Charter Communications, which operates under the Spectrum name. The reported $34.5 billion deal sets up to create a mega TV and internet provider. Charter and Cox expect their merger to help fend off growing competition from AT&T, T-Mobile, and other wireless providers. Cable companies are seeing their bottom lines shrink as consumers ditch pay TV packages for cheaper streaming options. The new company will be called Cox Communications, but Spectrum will be the consumer-facing name. The transaction is contingent on regulatory approval. And there's a flurry of activity across Chinese factories and ports. American and Chinese companies are rushing to make the most of the 90-day tariff pause. Bookings for shipping containers from China to the U.S. have spiked almost 300%, according to container tracking software provider Vizion. Meanwhile, multiple Chinese media outlets have reported that suppliers are working overtime to meet the surging demand from U.S. companies looking to restart orders. The U.S. and China announced the tariff rollback on Monday. The U.S. lowered tariffs on Chinese goods from 145% to 30%. Meanwhile, China cut levies on U.S. imports from 125% to 10%. The pause is for an initial 90 days as negotiations for a permanent deal continue. An Indian CEO is backing President Trump's push for manufacturing in the U.S. In fact, Capital Mind AMC Deepak Shinroy says this is the same push India should be making for local manufacturing. This is in response to criticism Trump got for urging Apple to stop expanding in India. On X, Shinroy asked why everyone was antsy about Trump asking Apple not to build in India and to build in the US. He said India should be pushing for local manufacturing too, instead of having things made in China. The time is ticking on U.S. trading partners to strike a deal with the Trump administration. For those who don't, the president says they'll just be told what their tariffs will be to do business with the U.S. Here's the story.
Many countries are in a tariff limbo right now with the U.S. On April 9th, the White House put a 90-day pause on sweeping reciprocal tariffs. During a roundtable in Abu Dhabi, President Trump said there are still 150 countries that want to make a deal. But he explained that it's not possible to meet and negotiate with that many countries. He went on to say his administration will end up sending letters to the remaining nations that lay out their new tariff rates. Trump said the rates will be very fair and that the letters will be sent by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. So far, the White House has announced two new trade agreements that resulted in lower tariffs, the first with the United Kingdom and the second with China. Trump's negotiators have said active discussions are underway with about a dozen countries. Until then, the U.S. maintains a 10% universal tariff on virtually all goods imported to the U.S.
South Korea's industry minister is asking for a waiver from U.S. tariffs. The diplomat added that a South Korean delegation would visit the United States next week for technical talks as part of negotiations. His meeting with U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer took place on the sidelines of a two-day gathering of trade ministers from the Asia-Pacific Economic Forum Cooperation Forum. Outside the meeting venue, around 20 protesters demanded that the U.S. and South Korea halt what they called unilateral trade negotiations. President Trump hit South Korea with 25% tariffs in April. Seoul was one of the first countries to hold face-to-face talks with Washington shortly after Japan returned to the trade negotiation table. Rite Aid's pharmacies are being dispensed to its rivals in a fire sale. The bankrupt chain sold its pharmacy service for most of its stores across the U.S. CVS, Walgreens, Albertsons, and Kroger scooped up more than 1,000 locations. CVS was the biggest buyer, snagging prescription files for more than 600 Rite Aid stores. In a statement, Rite Aid CEO said the deal means no service disruptions for its pharmacy customers and that some jobs will be saved. The transactions still need to be approved by the bankruptcy court. Rite Aid filed for bankruptcy for a second time earlier this month. 7 months ago, the chain had exited bankruptcy and emerged as a private company. A familiar face returning to lead United Health. New chief executive Stephen Hemsley will get a pay package worth $61 million. This is mostly in stock options that vest after 3 years, but could be kept if he steps down or is let go sooner. He's taking over for Andrew Whitty, who left the role for personal reasons. Whitty helped steer the company after the murder of CEO Brian Thompson. United Health has been struggling. The value of its shares dropped more than half in the past month. Novo Nordisk, the maker of Ozempic and Wegovy, is replacing its chief executive. The removal of the CEO, who has led the company for 8 years, comes as the Danish pharmaceutical company has lost ground in the weight loss drug market. Novo Nordisk says he will step down after he helps the transition to a new leader. Its stock has fallen more than 50% since the middle of last year. Former Novo CEO Lars Rabin Sorensen will join the company's board of directors as an observer. The intention is to nominate him as a board member next year. A new report on the Consumer Sentiment Index comes out today. The index measures how Americans feel about the economy. Other new reports reflect its actual state. Here's more.
If Walmart has to raise prices, everyone's going to raise prices.
Despite some grim news for American consumers, the economy is showing signs of hope. In a new report, the United Nations downgrades its forecast for GDP growth. It now predicts 2.4% globally and 1.6% in the U.S. this year. The good news is growth is still growth. Meanwhile, Walmart says its, quote, everyday low prices are going up on some items.
You're going to see price increases for some products. Other products, the cost increase will be absorbed at the source.
Walmart gets most of its food products domestically, so tariffs affect those less. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports egg prices are improving.
Everybody had eggs for Easter at a very reasonable price.
An inflation gauge called the Producer Price Index is down month over month. The Federal Reserve Chair says he's still concerned about the supply chain and inflation. He says interest rates could remain higher over the long term.
We may be entering a period of more frequent and potentially more persistent supply shocks, a difficult challenge for the economy and for central banks.
Meta is trying to wrap up an antitrust trial ahead of presenting its case. The company wants the judge to throw out the FTC case. The motion argues that the Federal Trade Commission failed to prove Meta unlawfully monopolized part of the social networking market. The federal agency has said that Meta illegally dominated the market for social media platforms used for sharing updates with friends and family when it acquired Instagram and WhatsApp. Meta is pushing back, saying the FTC failed to show a meaningful difference between friends and family sharing apps versus apps that share content to strangers, like TikTok. Meta argues it does compete with TikTok. Microsoft is offering a discount on its Office suite in Europe without the Teams video conferencing app. It could spare the company a big fine. European Union antitrust regulators made the announcement today. The European Commission said it would seek feedback from rivals and customers before deciding whether to accept the offer. If accepted, the deal would end a 5-year-long case that followed a 2020 complaint from Salesforce-owned Slack. The EU said Microsoft's offer would allow Europeans to buy Office 365 and Microsoft 365 suites without Teams for less than corresponding suites with Teams. Microsoft said the maximum price difference between the two suites would be $9. The company said it would align the options and pricing globally if the EU regulator accepts its offer. Japan's economy shrank for the first time in a year and at a faster pace than expected. It underscores the fragile nature of the country's economy recovery. Here's more.
Japan's economy shrank more than expected over the March quarter. GDP contracted by 0.7%, or more than 3 times the drop analysts had forecast. The downturn was driven by stagnant private consumption and exports. And the numbers suggest the economy was losing steam even before Donald Trump's tariffs kicked in. The US president has imposed 10% duties on most countries, with Japan to face 24% levies from July unless it can strike a deal before then. Trump himself has suggested that could be possible.
From Japan, I'm getting along very well with Japan. We're very close to a deal.
But Trump has also put 25% tariffs on US car imports, a critical sector for Japan. And prospects for an agreement with Washington remain very uncertain. With exports and consumption weak, economists say it's not clear what can drive growth. That could put Tokyo under pressure to step in. Some lawmakers have already urged Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba to cut taxes or provide more stimulus. However, the government says there are no such plans for now.
The island life is over for more than 1/3 of Bahama Breeze locations. The chain, owned by Darden Restaurants, said the move will allow the company to focus on its highest performing locations. This comes after people and news outlets shared sudden closures at multiple locations in multiple states, including Florida, Tennessee, and Nevada. The Caribbean-inspired chain closed 15 locations and has 29 restaurants remaining. Costco is joining the Buy Now, Pay Later bandwagon. The wholesaler is partnering with payment platform Affirm to offer customers installment plans for online payments on larger purchases. Members can use Affirm to pay for purchases priced from $500 to $17,000. There are several monthly payment options for different lengths and prices of installments to pay off the purchase. Installments are not an option for purchases in physical Costco stores. Train engineers in New Jersey's huge commuter rail system went on strike early Friday. Daily commuters were advised to work from home or seek other means to transit the state or cross the Hudson River into New York City. NTD's Sean Marshall was there.
Confused and stranded New Jersey Transit commuters are wandering the halls of Penn Station and the Port Authority bus terminal today. Closed signs are up for the New Jersey Transit system because of the strike that has stranded over 350,000 people. I found one rider willing to spare a second to share her story.
Just made it very difficult to get into New York, so I had to miss a lot of meetings and that sort of thing. Yeah. Well, I had to take Amtrak, which cost me $104 instead of $17, so whatever it cost. It's a New Jersey Transit, so I actually have to get back to something. So thank you.
A number of people were asking me for directions and information just while I was at the Port Authority bus terminal.
I would say to the passengers that this is on New Jersey Transit. New Jersey Transit had almost 6 years to solve this issue. They walked away from the table last night, and New Jersey Transit can fix it today. We're open to have discussions to try to get this settled and get passengers moving.
What do we want? Contract. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Contract.
Strikers were just outside of Madison Square Garden for much of the morning and took a break for rainy weather. The NYU graduation ceremony at the Madison Square Garden added to the confusion and commotion of the day. The New Jersey governor says a deal needs to be fair to employees and affordable as soon as humanly possible.
A deal that provides NJ Transit's employees, including our locomotive engineers, the wages and benefits they deserve, without being forced to raise costs on riders, commuters, and taxpayers.
People who normally rely on New Jersey Transit took to buses, cars, taxis, and boats for the morning rush hour after trains ground to a halt at a minute past midnight. Amid uncertainty ahead of the strike, the transit agency canceled train and bus service for Shakira concerts Thursday and Friday at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
Okay, just a quick update on markets. Wall Street's major indexes rose for a fifth day straight today, and it's driven by optimism from the recent U.S.-China 90-day tariff truce. But despite worsening consumer sentiment and inflation expectations, the S&P 500, NASDAQ, and Dow all posted weekly gains, fueled by Monday's rally following the trade pause and a new U.S.-UK trade agreement. Market strategists describe the mood as cautiously optimistic, but warned of future volatility as tariff impacts and economic data evolve. Investors are also awaiting clarity on tax policy after Trump's tax bill hit a roadblock in Congress. And that's it for today on Business Matters.